Awakening by Robert M. Kearns. Chapter 1. Kiri stood atop one of the many rolling hills in the grasslands of Mevar province, her destination in sight at last. The sun from a cloudless sky warmed her face, the soft breeze brushing her nose with a hint of the salty sea air from the south. She placed her sack on the ground beside her, taking a moment to stretch her fatigued body. Her stretches complete, Kiri retrieved a water skin from her sack and took a drink, taking care to slosh the cool liquid around her mouth before swallowing. The unpleasant itch in her left shoulder flared and Kiri sighed. She reached up with her right hand to massage the shoulder and, not for the first time, wished she could cover the brand there in some way. The brand proclaimed her status to all who saw her. With one last sigh, wishing for something she could never have, Kiri retrieved her sack and resumed walking to the city, sprawling across the river valley below. Tel Mevar was more than a province capital. It also served as the capital for the entire kingdom of Tel, and like its sister cities in other provinces, Tel Mevar was a relic of ancient times. Kirloth and his apprentices, wielding incredible power unheard of in the modern age, raised the city from the very bones of the earth and transmuted its structures into a marble-shaped stone immune to the ravages of weather and time. That's not to say the city remained unchanged, however, as the world's population rebounded in the wake of the Gods' War. Tel Mevar found itself at maximum capacity in less than 3 centuries. Wooden construction soon started springing up outside the city's walls, and over time, Tel Mevar became one of the most prosperous and populous trading ports in the world, its population divided among the old city and the new. No walls surrounded the wooden construction that had grown up outside Tel Mevar, though building some had been discussed down through the centuries, and Kiri strolled past homes and shops whose construction elicited strong memories of her homeland. In Vushar, the land of her birth, almost all construction was wood. Only affluent people could afford brick, and only royalty could afford stone. The nostalgia lasted just until Kiri came within sight of the West Gate, and she relied upon the training of her youth to hide her nervousness. "Well, look here," the youngest guard said as Kiri approached. "We have ourselves a rather fine-looking slave. Where's your owner?" Kiri squared her mental shoulders and met the guard's lecherous gaze eye for eye before lowering her eyes in submission. She hoped word of her escape had not preceded her arrival. "My master has sent me to Tel Mevar to visit the spice merchant," Kiri said. "May this slave please pass?" One of the other guards sauntered over. "Well now, I don't know," the newest guard said. "It seems to me we ought to help ourselves to the goods before we allow you to enter the city." Kiri shuddered in the depths of her mind and prayed she kept it from being seen. Something about the second guard spiked her fear. She took a couple slow breaths before responding. "If that is what you wish, this slave will strive to please and hopes my master approves," Kiri said, keeping her eyes downcast. "Baron Kalinor does not usually like anyone touching his property without permission." The 2 guards almost jumped back. A close friend of the king, Baron Kalinor's reputation as a petty and vindictive soul was known far and wide. He wasn't well acquainted with forgiveness either. "Go on through," the young guard said, his former brazenness now fled. Kiri kept the smile lighting her heart from showing on her face as she resumed her walk into the city. The moment she passed through the gatehouse and into the city proper, the itch Kiri had endured the last 2 years flared into an almost burning sensation. Kiri remembered hearing other slaves at her master's estate talking of this, and they said it was because the various protections, conjurations, and other magical effects built into the city created an ambience of magic that resonated with the power maintaining the brand. A sudden pain in her midriff dropped Kiri to her knees, and she struggled to pull the sack off her back. Shaking hands worked to untie the knots in the sack's drawstring, and her movements were jerking and frantic as she rummaged through the sack for what she sought. She seemed to find everything but the object of her search: jerky and nuts, extra clothing, even if they were simple homespun garments, and pieces of flint were but a few of the items she pushed aside. As the pain began to build, Kiri sighed her relief as she pulled a partially empty vial from the sack. Not trusting her shaking hands, Kiri pulled out the cork stopper with her teeth and spat it into the gutter before downing the contents of the vial in one large swallow. The mixture was off blue with hints of purple, and it was a vile-tasting brew, bitter and chalky. Within a few heartbeats, the pain was gone, and Kiri sagged against a convenient lamppost. Not content with the papers that declared her his property, or the brand on her left shoulder, Baron Kalinor laced Kiri's meals with a poison that concentrated in the lining of her stomach. Should Kiri ever fail to imbibe the foul-tasting swill in the vials within a few moments of the pain's onset, the poison would deliver a slow, agonizing death, and no cure for it existed in nature. With one last deep breath, Kiri pulled the drawstrings on her sack tight and draped it over her shoulder once more. She pushed herself to her feet and added an apothecary visit to her mental itinerary. Only 3 more vials remained in the sack. She would need more within a day or so. Kiri sighed. She wasn't proud that she'd stolen 2 coin pouches from Kalinor's estate. Her parents didn't raise her to be a thief, but she hadn't seen any other way to fund her trip home. The 2 main streets crossed Tel Mivar, one north to south, the other east to west. They divided the city equally, and they intersected at Market Plaza. Kiri turned south onto a secondary avenue that ran north to south about halfway between Westgate and Market Plaza. Kiri had no wish to stay on the main thoroughfare, though. She attracted far too much attention. The average Vushari possessed a complexion that was just noticeably darker than the fairer-skinned people of Tel, with blonde or red hair almost unheard of, and Vushari were not an uncommon sight in Tel either, given their culture of being sea traders. No, Kiri attracted too much attention because she'd been graced with the kind of looks that turned heads across rooms. Well-proportioned features, wavy hair the colour of glossy anthracite, an hourglass figure, and a smile that could put even the most disagreeable person at ease. Kiri had grown into one of those women who drew attention no matter how much she wanted to go unnoticed. Even the secondary avenue seemed crowded with people. Kiri had never seen the like before. Despite having spent both time in the Vushari capital and the port city of Birsha, Vushar's most populated city, Kiri was unprepared for the sheer hordes of people congesting the streets of Tel Mivar. Kiri was behaving like an unlettered rube as she walked south along the avenue. The way she gawked, turning her head this way and that, one would think she'd never seen a city before. Kiri should have kept her attention focused on her direction of travel. She was looking back the way she came, not watching where she was going, when she bumped into someone. She backpedaled and tried to apologise to the person, but froze, mouth open to speak. Standing in front of her was an unwashed man with greasy brown hair, wearing worn leather armour, and he carried a handbill. Kiri could only watch in stunned silence as the slaver lifted the handbill to read it, his eyes flicking from the parchment to Kiri and back. At last, he turned it for Kiri to see. Wanted. 1 week ago, a Vushari slave escaped from the Kalinor manse. She has shoulder-length wavy hair the colour of lustrous black, and the Vushari olive complexion. The slave is to be taken alive, unharmed and unmarked, for which Baron Kalinor will pay a sizable reward. For several moments, Kiri stood frozen, staring at the handbill. Word of her escape had preceded her, and her hopes of freedom dispersed like a mist before a breeze. She considered surrender. Yes, the Baron would find some creative way to punish her, but there wouldn't be any lasting injury. He prided himself on owning such a slave. Kiri resolved herself long ago to the likelihood of never seeing home again, and this attempt to run was nothing but a fool's errand at best. It was her thoughts of home and family more than anything else that reignited the fire of rebellion. Kiri saw the slaver recognise her fire for what it was, but he was too slow. A half-step carried her close enough, and her right knee was a blacksmith's hammer striking the anvil of the slaver's groin. The slaver's eyes bulged as he croaked in a breath, and Kiri turned to run. The string she used to drape the sack across her back went taut, the slaver clutching the sack even as he collapsed to his knees, and Kiri struggled in vain to pull herself free. He walked through the people that crowded the street, unremarked and unnoticed. His average build, brown hair, clean-shaven face and simple clothes ensured no one noted his passage, for he was a member of an order dating back to the Gods' War that went unmentioned in every history text. He was enjoying the pleasant sunny day because his order's liege had informed the local chapter house that a female Vishari slave would arrive in the city today, and she was to reach whatever destination she chose undisturbed and unaware of her protection. A slight commotion caught his eye, and he saw the object of his search facing a very unclean man and started drifting their way. He was close enough to see the Vishari knee the man and his collapse to his knees in response. His eyes narrowed upon seeing the man clutching the Vishari woman's sack. Without missing a step, he drew a dagger from the folds of his clothes and stepped close to the unwashed man. He clamped his left hand over the unwashed man's mouth and nose as he stabbed the dagger into the base of his skull. The unwashed man went limp, including the hand clutching the Vishari's sack. The Vishari dashed towards a nearby alley without a backwards glance, and the man gave the dagger a savage twist and jerked it free of the corpse's skull. Lowering the corpse to the ground, the man threw the dagger into a nearby storm drain and disappeared into the crowd once more. Kiri didn't give it a second thought when the slaver released his hold. She pushed her way through the crowd and headed for the nearest alley as quickly as she could. Within moments, she was out of the bustling crowd of people. Kiri lost track of how many twists and turns she had taken as she stumbled her way through the alleys of Tel Mivar. She didn't think she had crossed any streets, but it didn't matter all that much if she had. Kiri turned a corner to avoid what looked like a street ahead and found herself in a cul-de-sac. Walking to the end of the short passageway, Kiri collapsed on a mostly clean section of pavement and leaned her back against the wall. She didn't know how far the slaver was behind her, but she was winded from her flight. A few minutes' rest wouldn't hurt that much.